So we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Steve Edwards, the CEO of Premier Virtual. Thank you for participating in the webinar today. We have some great panelists that take virtual job fairs and they do more. A lot of people have done virtual job fairs, but what else can you do? And it's not only what else can you do, but it's how do you set it up? How do you run an event? How do you make something successful out there? It's so much more than just how do I connect a candidate with an organization. So, enough about me. Let's get started. Sarah, can you give a quick introduction, who you are, what you do, and why you said you wanted to be a panelist today?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm with Golden Sierra Job Training Agency. We are the workforce team out in California, and we cover 3 counties just outside of Sacramento, but work closely statewide with a lot of different agencies and AJCCs. So nice to be here today. I am a huge supporter of this platform and what it's been able to do for our job seekers and our businesses locally, and really just excited to share with you how we're using it outside of a typical job fair.
All right, perfect, Sarah. And Nick, a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, and first of all, how's the baby? Baby's good?
She's good, sick as usual, but daycare, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. How old is she now?
She actually just turned a year old 2 weeks ago, so she's about a year and a couple of weeks.
You got the new. This is the easy stuff. So, all right, a little bit about Nick and who you are and why you said you would be a panelist today.
Yeah, hey, how's it going, guys? My name is Nick Brandt. I'm actually a business service rep here with Arapahoe Douglas Works. So in Colorado, I work with the county. We oversee a couple of different counties. We do a plethora of things, but one of our primary focuses is hiring events and job fairs. We actually use Premier Virtual for both, not just a giant job fair, but for singular employers as well. I'm a big advocate for it. So when the pandemic happened, I was one of the people that was tasked to put virtual events together. I was writing my own coding, creating different things like Awesome Table, exhausting free resources until they wanted money. Premier Virtual came about, and it's actually helped take our organization to that next level. And I've been a big proponent in trying to get the state of Colorado to actually use the website in the platform as well.
Perfect. Well, we can stop it today. You guys hit every point that I was going to ask questions. So, thank you both for taking time. I know you have a busy schedule over there. So we're going to jump right in. Sarah, I'm going to start this question with you. Again, today is really to talk about, more than just job fairs, because so many people, when they see virtual, they think, well, it's just a virtual job fair. But how else, right? And the one event I'd like you to kind of talk a little bit, and maybe it's the title that throws it off, but the California State Job Networking. Tell us a little bit about that event, how you run that event, and kind of what that event is for.
Sure. So one of the most popular jobs here in California is to work for the state. It has a tremendous benefits, and an opportunity cycle. So we really have so many job seekers that want to work for the state, but it is a very, very confusing just process from start to finish. So what we do to try and help job seekers and use the platform to host a workshop that allows job seekers a Q&A and, a walkthrough of the actual application process, from how to find jobs that they qualify for all the way to the step-by-step application packet. And, it's super tricky for them because the state hiring, if you make one misstep, your application gets kicked out before you even get considered. And so it has been really great to be able to use the platform as a workshop platform and add, as many things. It's one of our more popular events. So with Zoom, unless you pay an exorbitant amount of money for a certain number of people, there's this limit that you have to then tell people, we're sorry, hopefully you can join us the next time. And with Premier, being able to do that inside the platform does not limit the people that we can serve. And so we've actually been able to, we've done this event now, I think 3 times, and each time we have at least 500 people that join us. And through that, they're able to learn how to apply for the state and hopefully end up getting that job that they are searching for. But yeah, it's been really great to use it as a workshop platform and like this, like Zoom, but better.
I like that, right? I like to tell people I have a little bit of Zoom in the platform with the video and the webinar. We have a little bit of Eventbrite with registration and landing pages, a little bit of Calendly with the scheduler in there, and a whole lot more. So there's so many to that. Nick, and there's a lot of workforce boards on, and a lot of people, you and I have had multiple calls about this, but it's going to kind of be a little off, but kind of what I know you do, because you were the one who made it happen and you kind of designed it and everything. Can you talk just a little bit about how you took essentially our platform and integrated it with the state of Colorado site and that data, right? Because that's what we all know with every workforce development board, the data is there. And you were the first. You went and you were doing something that everybody wants. Can you kind of just talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So kind of as what Steve alluded to. So one of our reps his name is Glenn. Initially, I don't want to say his last name wrong for Islamo. And
Yeah.
Steve, we actually had a lot of conversation about what kind of data would transfer. So the state of Colorado, we're so inundated that our state system connecting Colorado is still DOS. So for us, we would hold events. I'm going to kind of brag about the platform while answering your question. We would have events as little as a singular employer and having a hiring event of 200 people to career fairs where we'd have 150 employers to 900 job seekers showing up at one time without crashing. But recording our services, since we're a workforce center, would get very tedious and we'd have to do it individually. And so I had conversations with Steve and Glenn about how we could transfer API, what kind of data we would need to use. So, for us, our system, workforce, for every candidate, we create something that's called a mask. And essentially what a mask does, it replaces a social security number. But we would need a social security number, at least the last four, phone number, first name, last name, and an email. And all of that outside of the social, Steve and Glenn kind of put into the product, and that is required upon a registration, right? So we were able to come back to our state side and say, hey, if we meet these needs, and they provide us with a CSV report at the end of each event, we could download. Is there a way that we could kind of incorporate that and have a mass upload into our system, which we're able to do? So now after we do a singular event, whether it's a career fair or a job fair, we're able to get a job seeker report detailed with exactly what we need. And then we could put in our own questions, right? You get to, upon registration, when you complete your new event, you get to put in what you want. And that's made our life a lot easier. So now I could upload 900 job seekers into Connecting Colorado in a matter of 5 minutes because it just takes a hot minute to upload. We're able to get all of that data in a CSV report at the end of each event. And if you really needed it prior, you could even run it before as well, because you get to see those lists as they register for your event.
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. And I know I get asked that question. I don't want to say daily, but I get asked it a lot. So, I think a lot of people want to be able to have and know that there's not really the PII. There's not, right? It's not the data coming from, right, the state website into Premier Virtual. It's here's the data. You match that data and it goes into there, right? That's why we have the open API so that you can have that. So thank you on that. You touched, and I want to touch this a little bit more, is, the single employer events. A lot of people, again, think of job fairs with, like you said, the 150 companies, or like I always like to say, Massachusetts did the event with 1,700 employers in one job fair, and people get scared, right? And Sarah, this question is gonna come to you too on setup, so start thinking about that one because of what you do. But Nick, can you just talk a little bit about, right, your single employer events? How do you run them? How long do you run them? Does it have to be a large name company? Can it be a small name company? Talk to us a little bit about the single employer events.
For us, with what we do at the county, we actually use the singular events more to highlight our small mom and pop shops so we could get them a little bit more coverage. When we have a career fair, we like to bring some of those bigger employers because they're already going to be the giant draw anyway. And so it depends on what they're hiring for and how many positions have available. But for the singular, it's great for the fact that With the platform, we get to capture a job seeker's resume up front. We get to capture all their skills and prerequisites that they already have, a part of the setup wizard with Premier Virtual. So we get all that information up front. So the way we used to do our brick and mortar, it was more like an info session, right? A singular employer will come in. Here's a giant PowerPoint presentation. This is what to expect. This is how to apply. This is what our company looks like. Premier Virtual, we're able to kind of tackle all that up front with the early access. So what we normally do is we'll have early access about an hour to 30 minutes before. So that way job seekers are already looking through it. And we have that singular employer bring multiple recruiters. Although Premier Virtual just came out the new update to where you could talk to multiple people at one point, which is very great, instead of just having a one-on-one feature. But with the singular, we have the ability to do one-on-one while broadcasting a giant message with one recruiter with multiple people. And then that way too, we get to capture a little bit more information when they apply for their job. We get that metric right away, right? If an interview is set up or they kind of do that, we get to see that in real time and know what's going on with it. The singular, I prefer it actually a little bit more because we get more data up front and we actually get to have a little bit more hands-on with that employer as well.
Now, have you used, I know it's new within the system, but the video interview questions, have you used that at all for any of your single employer events?
So 2 employers have. One of them was actually a big company. It was Amazon. We just opened up a brand new warehouse in Colorado Springs. So they were looking to, I think, bring on about 2,500 new candidates. So we made that a prerequisite. And that actually saved a lot more time because now you're not feeling like you have to do your elevator pitch up front and have those conversations that they were scheduling interviews left and right. We actually utilized it for a couple of days and we made it a week-long event. And that saved a lot of time. They were able to kind of weed and filter in and out. Amazon's not necessarily picky, but they were able to get the top candidates right off the bat.
Perfect. And that's what really that was designed for, was to be able to let organizations watch those video questions before and choose which ones, either the generic ones that we put in or the other ones. All right. So thank you, Nick. Sarah, you do something that I'll tell you, we're starting to see more and more of. But I want to show this as I ask the question as well. When you set up your events, you guys set up an event, and this was the first time I saw somebody really do that. Can you talk about, why you do what you do? And what made you think of this? I love it, right? Because it's a phenomenal, I believe in efficiency. But you were the first organization to really set this up, and I think you started with, right, this one right here. And this was, one of my favorites, and I absolutely love this. And I'll tell you, we show a lot of people this specific one now. Why? Why and how'd you come up with that?
So I should preface, I come from the nonprofit event world. And so I have spent 20 years planning events and organizing logistics for the events. And so when it came to planning these virtual job fairs, I wanted to make it as accessible as possible. We have a very mixed community here that is either really tech savvy or not tech savvy at all. And so we wanted to provide the, usability that would help people find what they are looking for with a couple of clicks. And so with those particular settings, like search by experience has been something that we've added by request to our employers. They want to be able to feature jobs that are at the director level, the entry level, and find those positions that they qualify for. Now, when you go in those, you do see the booth just like you would, and they still have to look through the jobs and things like that. But it gives them an idea and a starting point to go from there. And we do those categories. All employer booths are one thing, but we also have a lot of resource teams here that have funding that can be shared. And so we invite Department of Rehabilitation. We invite our other local area partners. There's only 3 here, but we'll have about 6 in our August event. that cover the whole region. And so we wanted to give them a feature spot too, that they can meet with people that can help. And those are anything from, we help veterans. We have a veteran rep, we have DOR, we have, the different workforce boards, Sacramento Works, YOLO Works, all of those, we partner together on these big events. And so it just made sense for our people to be able to find, and then of course, in the need help, that's just me. I just want to be able for people to find me and ask questions of if they get stuck on something in the platform. So I'm in that booth answering questions, whatever comes my way, and reaching out to the team. There's so many things with the event setup that allows us to have access to your team, Steve, and ask those questions. If we don't know something, I can just reach out. And I will say my favorite new thing that, perhaps has been there a while, but I just started using is the announcement feature that allows me to remind job seekers which booths to go into, and that they can search jobs by categories, whether it's location. I should also say, we are a very widespread county. So even driving from one side of one county to the opposite side of that county, you're talking 2.5 hours. So to search by location became key for those specific job seekers that might be looking in Tahoe, but we also want to serve the people who are living in Sacramento, and that's a drive. So we want to make sure that we are allowing them the opportunity to find the job that's close to them. So it's making that community job fair still with that, when you go to the in-person ones, there's this community feel and you're right in their backyard. We don't really have that with virtual, but we can make that. And so that's where it kind of stemmed from. I hope that answers your question.
No, I love that. And I've said a lot. So just so everybody knows, Nick, you guys do a great job too, right? So they did the Mount I want to say, right? As you can see, it's very customizable, and they did it by location as well. So you guys are doing a great job as well, but that was the first one. So Sarah, I always believe efficiency. So if that candidate wants to come in and they want to look by industry, they can look by industry or location or job title, right? We haven't seen that before. I've seen the industry, the locations, and the title. And the good thing is that company booth can be in all of them, right? They can be in the entry level and then in Tahoe. So it makes it efficient. And this is what I always say. You want the right recruiter to meet with the right candidate. And how easy can you make that? When there's a lot of them, I was at an event a couple of weeks ago. I was actually at the Workforce Development Conference out in Vegas. And we were talking to some people, and I mentioned the Massachusetts event. And I said, I had 1,700 companies. And the first thing somebody said is, I was way too big. It's not a good event. And I said, well, let's think about this, right? If I tell you 1,700, your instant thought was way too big. But if I say, if I'm searching for a sales job in Fort Lauderdale and I only see those 20 companies, am I going to search those 20 companies? I'm going to look at all those companies because you made it efficient. And that's how, and I think there might be some people on here from up in the Massachusetts, they're trying to set another record. They're trying to do a job fair with 6 states around with like 5,000 companies in a job fair. But it all has to come to setup, right? And I think a job fair, right? Not just the job fair or a single employer hiring event that's national. It's the setup of the event. And that's what I love about, Sarah and Nick and, what you guys are doing with that, because you're making it efficient for your organizations and your attendees. If somebody's looking to hire sales candidates, they don't want to be talking to, accounting, right? They don't want to. And, I know you, Sarah, I think you just mentioned it. Nick, you just mentioned it, the group, the webinars. How many of your companies, or maybe you don't know, but how many organizations are using the webinar feature that are kind of doing group video where they can kind of get it out to the masses during the event?
So I'll go ahead and jump in. I know about 50 to 60% of our employers are doing it that way, or they're allocating certain users to that, and then while also having other users to be able to provide a one-on-one function as well, or monitor the chat so that way they can answer those questions, and employers are starting to feel more comfortable with the platform to where they're feeling more efficient, making sure every answer is coming across and to what a specific job seeker wants and needs, and how they're starting to be able to filter out, okay, this candidate might not be a viable option for here, but we have someone else from the different department in our team. For example, banks could have multiple industries in one, not just tellers, but IT, security, X, Y, and Z. We have multiple recruiters attending. There's not a cap on recruiters. So we like to hit all departments. So that way we're meeting the entire company need if they have it, to where they're able to filter over and say, this is who you need to conversate with. And then they get that communication, that line of communication open immediately.
All right. So you touched on something there. One, and this is very important. Sarah, I'm going to ask you the same question about your organizations, but Nick, you touched on it. One recruiter was running a webinar. One was running kind of one-on-ones and chats. So if you have multiple recruiters, one could be working the chat, one could work a webinar, and every time somebody comes in, they can just add them, and one could work one-on-one videos. They don't all have to be doing the same thing. Sarah, are you seeing your organizations use that functionality or something similar to it as well?
Yes, and I will say our resources are the ones that are using it the most because they need to do these orientations about their services. And that's, when you're typing away, that's a lot of information. So, where at first they might have been copying and pasting from a Word doc, now they can just hop to a video and have a one-on-one conversation, which not only feels, gets the information across faster, but it's also more intimate of a conversation. And when you're talking about those services, you want to know that person. You want to know that individual, and they're more likely to share in a platform where they're face to face than they are in a text or a chat message. And so it just opens up that opportunity to really make sure that we're able to serve all of those resource groups. As far as employers, I would say our bigger employers that have multiple people on their talent acquisition teams are the ones that are utilizing that video function because they want to take care of not just those pre-screening interviews, but maybe that second interview where it would have been a panel. They can now do that within the platform, and they can do it within the 4-hour window of our job fair. Although I will say we did the same thing Nick did. We're leaving it open a little bit longer each time to give space. And for us, that's our solution for our mom and pops. We our job fair in August is open for 3 solid weeks so that they can utilize the calendaring function and schedule those job interviews, schedule those panel interviews, and hopefully by the end of August they build a good chunk of those positions that they have left. So that's kind of how we're using the new features too.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. That's the next question. We're jumping. We're gonna jump into that, but we had a question from the audience. There's actually 2. One was a question. And said, Sarah, does the state join or is it just your office and this goes back to the networking in California?
I'm so glad you asked that because I didn't circle back. We actually do a 2-day event with that. So the first day is the workshop. The second day is the networking. And we call it very specifically a networking because it's not going to be a hiring event because the state has to hire within their CalCareers platform. And so, like I said, that packet is so particular that then we do a presentation with a local retiree from the state who helps them find the jobs. Then a state department comes in and talks about their specific application process. But then the networking day, we have as many state agencies as want to log in, come in, and they talk about the particulars and give tips and trips and maybe secrets that they might need to see on those applications to give the the advantage to those who attend. And so, like I said, it's been a pretty well received group, but it is open to, we encourage state agencies who have those multiple recruiters. And I will say the state is one of those that really likes the video function and the group interview function because they do things as a team. So yeah, it's both of those things. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So both you can answer this one. This is a question. Another question is, do you have the organizations when they're registering, do you have them select what categories, or do you do that for them after the setup of the event?
Categories for businesses, you mean? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So like if they go by industry and you put the industries, do you create that? Because we have some, and I think, David, this is kind of where it's going from is we have some hosts of the events that they set up the event and they don't put categories. And then after, right before the event starts, they add the companies to the categories. So they kind of choose based on their jobs or industries or locations. They have it. And then you have other groups that create everything up front, and then they let the companies choose which categories they're going to be in, industry, location, whatever. How do you do it?
I definitely allow them to select at first, but there is an element of what do I want to say it? Just double checking and make sure that they actually have jobs in those categories. So I will take at least 24 hours before it opens to the public. Sometimes it's 2 hours before based on scheduling, but just cleaning it up and making sure that they're in the right places. You know, I'll have some, it's really easy to see when they sign up in the need help category that they've signed up for too many. And so, you know, it's just a safeguard to make sure that what the job seekers are seeing. And we added, of course, the remote work position as a location. And if they don't have remote jobs, then I'm going to remove them from that category. But it's so easy to remove or place employers in on that, you know, setup that it makes it easy. I might as well let them choose first and then go back and edit versus just having to manually add them all myself. It's a little more work than I have time for.
And I love that. I 100% agree with that. Is let them choose where they want to be and then clean it up, right? Like you answered the question already. Is, you know, is it time consuming? Is it easy for you to be able to add or edit or anything like that with the organizations? But you kind of answered that already. So Nick, what about you guys? How do you guys set it up?
Yeah, so we have about 7 or 8 BDRs on our team. Most of us like to do the exact same thing as Sarah. Our preference is to let employers choose it, especially when we get to our bigger events where we're having a state event, right, of 150, 200, 300 employers, like especially WICO, we partner with Colorado and Wyoming. It's another state to get more jobs. We let them choose. And as Sarah alluded to, we're able to run the report and we kind of will filter and modify as we need be. There are some people that are a little bit more OCD on our team that don't trust employers to go into multiple things. If they, like one of our vet guys wants them to only be in one category, even if they could fill all of them. So the thing that's nice is we have the ability to customize and modify as we see fit. But as both of you alluded to, I like letting the employer try to set up themselves first. And then what I like to do personally is I'll set up our resource booth for our programs after. So that way we get them put in there, because sometimes they might accidentally say, hey, well, we're hiring, so we want to attend it, but they don't want it to be posted for the public. It's more of a private opening. So that way we're able to, as Sarah kind of alluded to, we could kind of pre-screen and qualify candidates in the resource booths that way. So we usually set that up last just for what our programs require here at AD Works. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you on that. And then, you know, do you guys, as we're kind of talking about features, do you, right? Because again, I like to throw everything out there. Do you make it where you have to approve the candidates and the organizations, or do you just kind of let everybody come in? Or do you even use that feature?
We have used it a couple of times for some of our hiring events to try to eliminate people that might not be qualified. If we have, for example, we've had hiring events, you know, for law firms that are going to be a little bit more stringent on what they're going to be looking for. But typically we usually just let everybody and anyone into the events as long as they meet the specifications that we put upon registration.
Okay, perfect.
And we actually limit our employers, but not our candidates. So it's open to anyone. I can see, Nick, how you would use that feature for those very specific jobs. We have not done that high of a, you know, but if we were hiring for a director position specifically, of course, we would want to do that. However, with employers, it's actually more to benefit me than anything else. Yes, we want to make sure that we have a variety of employers for these job fairs, but we don't limit them. We let everybody in, but by putting that approval process in place, I can see who's joining and when they're joining, and I can reach out and say, hey, thanks for connecting. And so it's really a benefit to me as the workforce staff to see and approve those employers instead of just having them added, you know, at will.
All right, and that's what it's for. And we see so many different use cases. I have some workforce boards that on their job fairs, every candidate has to be approved, because what they do is they check it to make sure that they're registered in their state before they let them into the job fair. Where some they let everybody in and they don't care. And then they reach out to them after the event. So everybody does something just a little bit different, that's there. You touched on something that, timeframes of the events. Now Sarah, you touched on one for the 3 weeks, right? You're going to have a 3-week long event. When I look at something like that, I'm like, I don't know if you saw my face. It's like, but there's a reason why you do that. And I like that, right? And I don't think a lot of people think about that, because when I think about a 3-week long job fair, I put on job fairs for, 10 years. So to me, it was always a date, a time, and a location. If I can drive the candidates in at a date, time, and location that the recruiters are going to be there, I want them to connect. But you're doing it for 3 weeks because of some of the features that are on there, and you touched on it a little bit. But can you go a little bit more detailed on why you want it 3 weeks, what you want those candidates to do, so that people can really understand it's not a 3-week job fair, but it's preparing them for the job fair. Am I correct?
Absolutely. So yes, we took this undertaking on. I will say my team thinks I'm losing my mind, but again, I come from events, so this is the natural progression of how my mind works. So I'm gonna try it. I'll let you all know how it goes. But no, the first week is strictly workshops. So typically when you go to an in-person job fair, you've got this other room that you host workshops or resumes or printing, whatever it might be, that helps the job seekers be prepared for the event. Well, we're just moving that up a couple of weeks, and we're hosting that through the platform. And so we wanted to, be able to coach these job seekers on what they need, explain the resources available to them, which the resources in our area, we'll use those as a way to make one candidate outshine another if there's funding available to give back to the employer. And so we're very strategic about how we work with those workshops and things. And then one of the workshops that we have been hosting is an expungement. So if someone has a DUI or it's on their record, we have this seminar that they can then sign up for that helps them to get rid of those things. And so it's really, it's so focused on making them the best candidate that they can be. So when they come back a week later to the virtual job fair, they are ready with their resumes, whether they're custom or whatever. The job fair platform has been open for a week, so they can go in and look at those employers' offerings and really truly customize that resume for the job that they want. And then the employers, on the other hand, can, see their profile, look at the candidate, see, start, rating them, which is one of my favorite features for the employers, is put that star, put that note when you have a good conversation so that you can look back on that in the report section. And then of course that final week is going to be our in-person, but we're utilizing the platform because we want to make sure we use those QR codes on every single table, because our mom and pop businesses specifically, they don't have a careers page. So by hosting them on the platform, people can apply for their job with a resume in the platform. And so it was very strategic. We could have probably done the hybrid in one date. But again, trying to help people move throughout the platform as easily as possible and giving them the most opportunity, we opted to spread it out over the 3 weeks. And of course, the employers are stoked that's such a California word. They're excited to be able to have these calendar appointments, set up these one-on-ones with the job seekers, and utilize that feedback came from our employers asking for more time on the platform. I will say it's about asking your employers what they need and really creating an event that meets those needs more than it is, yes, we're doing it right, we're doing the only way you should do it. Like, it's really knowing your community, knowing what works best for them, and this is what works best for our community.
I mean, that what you just said right there is gold, John. Just make sure at this time that what you just said right there, Sarah, makes so much sense. It's not about what you like. I mean, I'm changing the words a little bit, but it's not about what you like and what you think. You went to your employers and asked your employers, what do they like? What do they want, right? How are you going to service them, right? And that whole thing that you talked about, is everybody that's listening is, think about that. If you're not going to your employer and saying, how can I help you, right? What can we do right? And that's where you see a lot of the things within the Premier Virtual Platform comes because of questions like that, right? When we did focus groups and organizations were on, right, our clients were on and said, here's what we want to see. It's because of the feedback they got from their organizations. So that's how we can always continue to enhance our platform so that you can service your clients even better. But we're going to dig in a little bit on that 3 weeks, right? I love what you're doing, right? You start with workshops, right? Getting people ready, getting their resumes ready so that they know, right? And that's another thing. And a lot of people don't know why I did this, but we allow people to upload multiple resumes. So it's not just a generic resume, because what happens when you go to a job fair, you have a generic resume here. Well, what happens if you're in that virtual job fair and you find that job that you love? This is my dream job. This is everything I want. And I want to change a couple things to make it look like that my resume is perfect for that. Well, they could change that and then upload it specifically to that company with that company name, maybe having a cover letter in there. And that's why we have that system, not just because some people have a software design resume and a software developer or a sales and a leadership. We have that function uploaded so they can make that perfect resume so that they have that. Then you got to kind of the job fair, using the calendar section. The calendar is great because each recruiter on the platform can set their own time frame of when they want to have one-to-ones. So if one recruiter is doing it from 12 to 1, next one's doing it 1 to 2, next one's 1 to 3, they can do it. But they can all set their calendar. So when they come into that day of the job fair, they log in, they see their schedule, and they have it there. And then you're doing, which is music to my ears, and I'd like to know the exact date of the hybrid, is the QR codes. That's exactly why we put the QR codes in, so that you now can have your in-person event and your virtual, and people can scan it, submit the resume like you just said, and it tracks. Because what does that do? It gives you the data and the analytics that you can't get in in-person. From an in-person job fair, how many times have you walked up to an organization after a job fair and says, how was the event? And the recruiter goes, it was all right. It was good. How many resumes you get? I don't know. How many interviews you schedule? I don't know. I used to, because I was a for-profit company, when we did those, is I would walk up, and I learned this over time, is I would walk up with my phone and I would take a picture of the resumes, and I'd be like, wow, you got a lot. And if I knew if a recruiter wasn't like happy, didn't really want to be there, I'd take a picture from behind the line of the long line at their booth, so that if they said, oh, there was challenges, I knew it, right? Because I would learn the recruiters, because we did our job fairs just a little bit different. They were in the evening time. They were industry specific, and each company would speak and say, here's who we are, here's what we do, here's what we're hiring for. So it drive the right candidates to the right companies. Again, efficiency and that. So I love that you're using, you touch base on so many different things just with what you said right there. So
I will say that the QR code also is going to help job seekers, because they can scan that QR. If there's a line at that booth and the job fair is only 4 hours, they're not going to stand in line for an hour. They can scan that QR code, look at the job offerings, and see if standing in that line is going to be worth their time for the job that they want. And so it's not just a help for our businesses to have that application piece. It's help to our job seekers so that they're using their time in the most efficient fashion.
I couldn't have said that any better. That's a huge proponent to what what that's there for, right? There's no waste of time. Candidates can see if they even want to wait in that line. So Nick, you kind of to throw the ball into your court, you touch base on this first, the early access, and how do you use the early access to an event for your advantage, for your organizations and attendees?
So typically we will do early access. For my preference, I usually do about 3 hours prior to the event. We used to do 24 to 48 hours. We noticed sometimes candidates might not show up because they already submitted their resume. COVID changed the world, right? Hence why we're using virtual platforms, for example. Social interaction might become a little bit more of an awkward thing. So we noticed people might not be showing up as much to the event. So we usually do it same day for a couple hours. As you alluded to, I know Sarah's saying that they have their workshops and kind of help build that resume out. With the Workforce Center, I noticed a question kind of floated in we do dry runs for an employer, and we also do dry runs for the job seekers. especially if they're candidates that are going to be attending from the workforce center. So we walk them through the platform, but that way they're customized. We're saving their time. They're feeling more efficient by going into those booths, and they're getting direct access to talking to the recruiter that they want to talk to and submit that resume and get in front of the right person and be as cognizant as possible with their time and the recruiter's time. So having that 3-hour window is kind of what gets them that. And we give them a list of attending employers prior to the event anyway.
Perfect. Love that. So you love that, right? You're giving them, letting them come in, see the organizations, right? Because they can track all that in the My Journey. Is here's who I'm interested in. Here's the ones, right, that I scheduled my interviews with. They can do that. One thing we didn't touch on, but back when you have the events, when that candidate comes into an organization's room, that organization now can see that candidate's profile. So the organization can schedule a one-on-one, as well as the attendee can schedule it with that organization. It's not a one-way street, it's a two-way. So as long as that candidate goes into that company's booth and that company can see their profile, they can schedule that one-on-one interview. That's a great thing. Now, this is a question I always am interested in. Your job fair. How long do you keep your job fairs open?
So for us at AD Works, depending on the size of it, we usually do about 2.5 hours, 3 hours. That being said, not only do we have early access, we have the post access that we leave open as well for the full 24-hour day. Because, there's people that have an intent to come for whatever reason, it's raining outside, they get lazy or something comes up with. For me, I have my kids sick all the time. Daycare, it is what it is. If I'm a job seeker, I want to be able to, even if I can't get in front of that recruiter that same day, having access to it the whole entire day, it gives me more flexibility to still get in, submit a resume, look at my opportunities, and kind of get myself out there. And then we leave it open for that reason for the employers too, so they could continuously follow up. We have that conversation. We cover that in our dry runs as well.
Perfect. Sarah, what about you?
This is where you're going to think I'm crazy again. We leave ours open for a full week every time.
Okay.
Early access is a key for the job seekers. We encourage it as a chance to do those custom resumes. Post access is for all those people that miss the job fair, that want a chance to apply for these openings that are, hosting. And I will say for some of those employers who don't get to adding their jobs in time, it gives them a little bit more time to be on the platform and accept resumes for those positions. And so again, that came from feedback from our employers in what works best for them, as did how long we keep the platform open. So we function in 3 different counties. All counties have very different personalities. And so we have one job fair that they want the virtual platform open longer. So we keep it 4 hours. But I would say the majority of our, employers like the 2-hour window. And I even gave them 2-hour options in different times of the day and asked them for that feedback on when do you want a job fair? Do you want a weekend job fair? All of those questions that we really want to make it as usable for them as possible, because that's why we're here to do. We want to host them. And so our sweet spot is 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. here. They really like that. That seems to be the most successful. And then I just message them throughout and encourage them and keep them encouraged, especially in the 4-hour ones. About halfway through, I have this message that I send to all employers: don't forget to stand up, little things like that, just pieces of encouragement to keep them motivated, and they appreciate that. So.
I love that you said that. So I'm a huge fan of a 2-hour job fair. Huge fan, right? Even on the larger ones, 2 hours, because you're driving the candidates in and you're getting there. So a lot of people don't know this, but when my first ever job fair that I put on virtual back in 2018, at that time, we were hosts of job fairs. We used to host them. This was before we built Premier Virtual, as we were hosting the events. First ever job fair, I said, I'm going to have a job fair from 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. And so think about back then, nobody knew about virtual job fairs. It was that industry was very small. I'd have to explain to people how a virtual job fair works. But I tell them, listen, from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, we're going to get the unemployed people, right? That's where most job fairs are 10 to 1, you get the unemployed. Then you get people on their lunch break. Then people that get off shift midday can come in. Then you get people at dinner, or like me, when I put my kids to bed at 7, I could log on. So we're going to keep it till 8 o'clock. People loved it. They were like, oh my gosh, you really put your thought in. I was like, yep, this is good. Then the day of the job fair, reality slapped me in the face. 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., it was slam packed. And then guess what? After 1 o'clock, candidates stopped logging in. So recruiters, right? Like you said, you email them, tell them to stand up. Recruiters started to log off. They're like, nobody's there. Job fair's done. They're used to 10 to 1 anyway. Then they were there. Well, then all of a sudden, 5:30 hit. Ton of traffic came in. 5:30 to 7 was really busy again. But guess what? There was no recruiters on there because the recruiters had all logged off, right? Except the ones that had shifts. The smart recruiters, they'd say, here's a 2-hour shift. So even if it was dead, that recruiter was still on. So a few companies had the shifts that they were there, but everybody else, nobody was in. 7 o'clock, dead. Nobody logged in. Not one candidate logged in from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And I realized, okay, 3-hour job fairs are perfect. And I did them from, I played with times. I liked 4 to 7. That was mine, but this was back when the unemployment rate was a little bit different than it was. And people were logging in after work. Again, that was kind of our business model in the first place. But you had that 3-hour time frame was always really good to be able to have to that. This is a question that, it was asked in there, but it was on mine as well, as how do you train your organizations? Do you do the training yourself, or do you use Premier Virtual, which that's what we have a team for? Do you use Premier Virtual to do trainings for your organization on each one of your events, or do you kind of train them yourself? How does the training work for you guys?
So for us, initially, we were utilizing Premier Virtual. We were getting together those dry runs put together and what it looked like. And then once we felt a little bit more comfortable, if we didn't have a reoccurring employer and there were new employers, we would do that for them as well. The primary thing that we do, the one thing I'll say about Premier Virtual, customizable, right? It's the customization of it is what's key for us. And that's our biggest selling point is we give them a dry run. So we actually, on the registration page, first and foremost, we put the tutorial videos that are provided through Premier Virtual on the registration page. We allude to that in our email blast that we send out for the recruitment. And then afterwards, we will have a dry run. If employers want to, we gauge who actually wants to do it. We cover the trainings that are provided on Premier Virtual, because you have sections in Premier Virtual that's not long videos. That's very easy to watch. If they have more in-depth questions that we might not be able to answer, but we will answer the day-to-day, or like the prototypical questions. How do I upload a job, or X, Y, and Z? You have those videos, but that's something we feel very comfortable with. And we kind of cover that because you guys provide everything up front and all the resources for us to make our jobs easier.
Perfect. What about you, Sarah?
I would say that this is where I get to shout out Glenn, because he does an amazing job in all of those trainings, just making sure the employers, every single question is answered. And we kind of tag team those because some of the questions have nothing to do with the platform, but the job fair itself. And so we work together very closely on those trainings. I try to plan one live training that in most cases. So like I said, we cover 3 counties. Each county tends to have their own job fair. They want their own job fair, even though we can do them all at once. That has been a request we are fulfilling. And so we typically do them in the same month. So we end up with these 3-week job fairs. Maybe that's why it doesn't seem so daunting to me, but we'll have a job fair for Placer County. We'll have a job fair for El Dorado County. Again, very different counties, very different populations as far as employers go as well. But we hold one training, and that covers all of them. And then, so like Nick, I send out the full training recording in my intro email. Hey, if you want to know more about the platform, check out this training. It'll walk you through the registration, all of that stuff. Then we do the live training. Then once the live training is over, I will send to every employer that has registered, hey, here's the recording of the live training we just did. Let me know if you have any questions. And there are cases where I am doing one-on-one trainings with all those questions, whether they want to ask those questions in the live format, or if it's just they didn't have time to come and they still have questions. But in most cases, all those questions are answered in the video. So then it's just repeating myself. And they say, what is it? 7 times you have to hear something to really get it. And then I will add, we are still doing them for our employers, even though the ones that have participated are pretty familiar with the platform and the registration process, especially that 5 minutes it takes to register once you already have your booth pretty much set up. But I like talking about the new features because that allows me to show them we listen to their feedback, we forward it on, like I give Glenn the information, hey, here's what they said, and then your amazing team implements those changes and our employers are impressed and excited, and then I get to take credit and say, hey, look at these new features. So it's really this partnership of customer service and providing what they're needing and giving them ample opportunities.
Perfect. Yeah. And that's why we have, Glenn and his team is because there's more than just customer support, right? That's the client success team that's there to be able to train you, help you do everything. I joke a lot. I'm like, I used to be the face of the company as the CEO. And then I used to do all the training videos, but everybody said, Steve, you talk too fast. So Glenn is the best at it, right? He's there. He's easy to listen to and he can really explain. And that's what him and his team does, right? You got Jordan. I get more emails from clients about Glenn and Jordan than I do anything else, just about how amazing they are to be able to really help you, right? That's their daily job and goal is to make sure that everything goes smoothly for you. So we're gonna wrap up here in a couple minutes. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A or in the chat for there. We have another one that is from David. As a nonprofit or state agency, what avenues do you use to advertise or promote your events?
I'll jump in. I come from a marketing background that was part of my logistics with nonprofits. And so I've implemented, although in workforce, we call it outreach. So our outreach efforts are through social media, through eBlast, through partner relationships with other agencies and other local workforce boards, because the uniqueness of our region. People don't think about how far they have to drive if they live 45 minutes to an hour away. We have people that drive from Sacramento all the way to the Bay Area, which is 2.5 hours every day. So for us, that drive time, we share far and wide as much as we can and rely on those partners to share through those email relationships. Other than that, we design creative, eye-catching materials. You can see each one of our events looks a little bit different. That marketing carries through from the employer invite to the job seeker invite to the platform to the post access, all of that. We keep the same label recognition throughout each event and really customize each event with that look and feel for the community that it's reaching. And so again, it's about knowing who you're serving and customizing it accordingly.
Yeah,
Perfect.
That's exactly how AD Works is. And I mean, the other community partners that we really partner with, there's our Chamber of Commerce throughout the different counties as well. They're a huge advocate and put it on their calendars as well by gaining the employers, which then turns into the job seekers. But that's exactly how we do it too, Sarah.
Perfect. It's getting it out there, right? Like, and I tell everybody, and we hear this a lot, is how can I partner with my community to get them out there, right? As a nonprofit, right? As a workforce board, you should be able to partner with all of the organizations around you so that they can get it out, right? Posting it on social media, getting your organizations to post it, right? If you post something on your social media, tag the companies so that then the companies can repost it. But if you can get them to repost it as well, right, it starts to grow grow that's out there. So is there any other questions that we have from the audience today? It's like we answered all the ones that were in the chat. So Sarah, Nick, we appreciate your time today. Again, you had some points here that were just absolute gold of how you're using it. You touched on the QR codes. You touched on the calendars. You touched on the single employer hiring events. You touched on the countywide job fairs. You touched on pretty much everything that people are using the virtual platform for. Now, again, obviously we're Premier Virtual, right? This is what people are talking about. But if your organization is using another platform that's out there, are you using and doing the same types of things? All right. The one thing we said, and you know, I think Sarah said it earlier is, you know, we don't limit. So one thing with Premier Virtual is I don't believe in limits. I don't believe in a limit of you can only have a certain amount of candidates. I don't believe that you can only have a certain amount of organizations. I don't limit your events, that you can have unlimited events, because guess what? There is times that we will have workforce development boards that they'll do a veterans event, a single employer hiring event, and a readiness event all at the same time. They don't have to put it on the calendar and say, hey, can we do this? Hey, Premier Virtual, can we do this? You don't have to do that. I never want to limit you on anything on the platform so that you can go out, you can have your one-on-one video, you can have your webinars. There's no limits to those. There's no extra fees to all of those. So for everybody listening, I just sent my email address. I know Zach put his in here as well. If anybody wants a full demo of the platform, you know, please send us an email, and we're going to follow up with the recording of this as well. Again, Sarah, Nick, thank you for everything today, and hopefully everybody has a great day.